If you're the sort of airsofter who doesn't take themselves too seriously, have we got a gun for you? Welcome to Explosive Enterprises, and today we're going to transform WE's rendition of a Desert Eagle Mark 19 from an airsoft novelty into a credible hand cannon of a sidearm. Believe it or not, there actually is a practical niche for this gun in airsoft, but to get there, let's start by talking about the real thing. So the Desert Eagle is well known thanks to its frequent use in video games and films as a big gun for manly men, and as a consequence it has a lot of mythology built up behind it. No, it was not developed for Israeli special forces, nor was it intended to stop cars. In fact, the original Desert Eagle, as designed by Magnum Research in 1982, only came in .357 Magnum and was intended as a proof of concept and target pistol, with the 44 Mag and 50 Action Express variants coming later. The Desert Eagle is a finicky handgun with a tendency to malfunction if not held very firmly, which, on top of its massive size and weight, make it a poor choice for most practical applications. The real gun is, frankly, a mediocre 80s gimmick that's only famous because of pop culture, so naturally I own one, in 50 Action Express, in addition to its airsoft counterpart. But it turns out that in airsoft, many of the issues of the real thing don't apply, while some of its legitimate benefits still carry over. It's still massive and awkward for those without gorilla hands, but the airsoft version doesn't weigh nearly as much as the real thing, recoil is irrelevant, it's as reliable as any other gas blowback gun, the rifle-like gas system lends itself to consistency, the barrel is fixed which helps accuracy, it has good provision for mounting optics, and of course it just looks cool. So, we're going to lean into its strengths and target two goals of this guide. First, maximizing long-range effectiveness, and second, making an ostentatious showpiece of a sidearm. So let's start with the basics. WE produces both the Mark 19 and L6 variants of Desert Eagle, and both come in black and chrome finishes, as well as intermittent gold and tiger stripe finishes. However, the first run of silver Mark 19s had a different, chalky, painted finish, which frankly looks pretty bad. Most shops now only have the newer finish and call it silver, but if you're given a choice between silver and chrome, opt for chrome. As for variants, the Mark 19 and L6 are identical internally, so this is a purely aesthetic choice, although the L6's integral rails mean less work will be needed for optics. We'll get to that later. The guns are made entirely of cast aluminum alloy. It's certainly not as nice as milled or even cast aluminum, but it is a step above the porous zinc pot metal that WE used to use on their guns. Now there is a stainless steel kit made by ALC, which is reasonably priced at holy sh. Well, anyways, the stock materials are okay, and honestly it looks pretty nice even next to the real thing. As far as the black guns, they have a nice chalky dark gray finish that looks and feels much more like Parkerizing than the usual flat black of airsoft guns. So assuming you've got the pistol, let's start by going over controls and then field stripping. The trigger, magazine release, and slide release all follow standard pistol design. As with most pistols, it'll lock open on empty, and with a loaded magazine inserted, the slide can be dropped by either pressing the release or pulling and releasing the slide. All very standard stuff, just comically large. The hammer is single action only, and if the hammer is dropped and then a mag inserted, it can be made ready to fire by manually cocking. The Desert Eagle's safety is an ambidextrous lever on the side. It is very important to keep the securing screws tight, as if either of these screws loosens, the safety may engage or disengage accidentally. A bit of blue Loctite on the screws will help keep them in place. If the safety is too loose even with the screws fully tightened, it may be necessary to bend the spring plates to apply more tension. So to disassemble the gun, start by verifying that it's unloaded. Then depress the disassembly plunger on the right side and rotate the disassembly catch on the left side downwards. This unlocks the barrel, allowing the barrel and slide assembly to come off the frame, then come apart into barrel, slide, and recoil spring. With the gun field strip, there are two simple modifications that should be done out of the box before considering anything else. First, remove the magazine catch. By default, the angle on the underside of the catch is very steep, which means it requires a lot of force to insert magazines and can actually damage the mags over time. Filing this to a shallower angle will make it significantly easier to insert mags. Second, disassemble the barrel and extract the hop-up adjustment screw. By default, this is just a grub screw, and the leading corner has a tendency to bite into the hop-up adjustment arm rather than smoothly adjust. So, filing down this corner to round it off slightly will fix this particular issue. Now we get into actual upgrades. Upgrading the hop-up is a worthwhile investment, as the stock WE bucking is not very good, and this gun is otherwise capable of excellent accuracy. And while we use the maple leaf bucking and barrel for this pistol, due to inconsistent results we cannot recommend that brand. Instead we would suggest using a VSR type PDI W-hold 70° bucking with PDI or edgy barrel as a worthwhile upgrade. The nominal barrel length is 136mm, but shorter will work fine too. Upon reassembly, it may be helpful to wrap the barrel in electrical or Teflon tape so that it does not wobble in the outer barrel. The barrel in this gun is fixed in place during use, so it's ideal if the inner barrel is a tight fit. So, moving over to the slide, be aware that this gun typically shoots 1.2 to 1.3 joules out of the box. If you need to reduce the power, it's an easy fix, so start by unscrewing the safety screws we discussed earlier. Then remove the blowback unit. Once these are all unscrewed, the nozzle and blowback unit will drop out along with their screw, and the safety crossbolt will drop out as well. On the nozzle, carefully unscrew the tiny screw that secures the retaining plate, then dump out the rocket valve and retaining plate. All you need to do to reduce the muzzle energy is reduce the inner diameter of the rocket valve. On this modified one, we've inserted a piece of styrene tubing with a bit of superglue to keep it in place, and then bored it out to 4mm inner diameter. This produces 1 joule muzzle energy with 0.32 gram BBs, making it legal for use in CQB. Now there do exist drop-in restrictor discs that go in the front of the nozzle and reduce muzzle velocity. These also have negative effects on blowback strength and efficiency, so we really strongly recommend working with the rocket valve instead. Surprisingly for WE, the stock piston cup seals quite well and the nozzle assembly is not broken in use, so if the stock muzzle velocity is fine, there's no need to open the slide up to begin with. Otherwise, just reverse the disassembly process to reassemble the slide. Once the slide is back together, now's a good time to note that while the sights are fixed in place, the rear sight may have a bit of wobble. A tiny dab of superglue will keep it in place without preventing disassembly in the future. At this point, the pistol should perform well, with consistent muzzle velocity at your chosen power level and good mechanical accuracy. The massive nozzle provides strong blowback on propane, and the physical size of the magazines allows them to hold quite a bit of gas. This gun can cycle reliably down to around freezing on stock parts, although it will become sluggish and only barely clear a magazine at the lower end there. Now note that while some online stores state that the magazine holds 21 BBs, they actually hold 27. While they do not have an open front, a standard pistol speed loader adapter will work fine to load them. Also be aware that the nub which secures the base plate is easily broken off, so try not to drop the magazines. If this nub does break, supergluing or epoxying a replacement on will work fine to retain the base plate. As for the gun itself, surprisingly, it's held up well to use. Of the 3 Eagles we've owned, none have experienced parts breakage, likely because the massively overbuilt design provides a lot of inherent strength. There's one major issue that we've seen reported online, which is the barrel indexing lug cracking after extended use, which is part of why we are hesitant to use CO2 magazines with this gun. However, if any other parts should fail, or if you would just like nicer controls, RA Tech does sell a suite of steel upgrade parts for the gun. So with the gun accurate and reliable, it's time to work on the externals, and the first order of business is replacing the grips, which are wobbly and really cheap feeling. There are a number of options here. First, wood grips for real Desert Eagles exist. However, because of differences between the Airsoft and real frames, they will require a non-negligible amount of fitting work and will typically have a gap at the back of the frame once assembled. They're also typically overbuilt to avoid cracking under recoils that tend to be fairly thick even by Eagle standards. Still, it's an option. Alternatively, Kim Poi's shop makes wood grips specifically for the WE Desert Eagle in a couple of styles. We've had a number of grips from them and they've all been okay, albeit not the highest quality, but this is a drop-in, no modification needed option. Next are Aluma grips. These are, as the name suggests, aluminum grip panels intended for the real gun, but require less modification. It is necessary to file the underside of each catch to accommodate the thickness of the frame, then file the inner surface to clear the magazine, but this can all be done in an hour or two of work. These are extremely solid grips that feel great in the hand, no flex, and more importantly are fairly slim, making the gun a bit easier to hold. However, the smooth ones don't offer much grip when wearing gloves, so checkered is a better choice. And lastly, we get to rubber grips, which come in both finger groove and grip panel flavors. These aren't drop-in, but require relatively little modification to fit. They may not be as showy or stylish as previous options, but they are a dramatic improvement over the stock grips and just feel nice in the hand. At this point, I typically use factory rubber grips as they allow me to comfortably shoot the pistol one-handed while wearing gloves. There's one more aesthetic upgrade to consider, and that's wax. I use Renaissance wax and work just a little bit into the surface with my fingers, then buff it to a shine with a microfiber cloth. This doesn't give any tactical advantage whatsoever, but it sure looks pretty. Anyways, now the last upgrade to consider is optics, but before we actually discuss options, the gun needs to be made optics ready. Real Mark 19 Desert Eagles come with Weaver cutouts on the barrel, and WE has replicated this, but not deeply enough for them to actually be functional. So on this gun, we've used a steel file to deepen the cutouts, allowing them to be used with standard Weaver or Picatinny accessories. The optic that I use on both my Airsoft Eagle and my real one is an ultra dot sight. These are red dot sights manufactured in Japan and intended for 22 bullseye shooting, but because the optic is mounted to the barrel rather than the slide, they hold up to recoil fine on the real gun, and on both real and Airsoft remain stationary when shooting. This makes the dot easier to track while shooting and doesn't have any negative impact on gas efficiency. Now this sight costs about as much as the Airsoft Eagle does, but there are other options. The main limitation is that a sight needs to fit between the two cutouts, so something like a micro dot won't fit. If you get a real steel rail adapter, or just start with the L6 version, then that opens up more options. The gun is such a good host for optics that I strongly recommend considering it. However, then the issue becomes finding a holster, and that brings us to accessories. Unsurprisingly, there isn't a massive market for tactical Desert Eagle holsters. So far, the best I've found for an optics-equipped Desert Eagle is the Ammo Max, on which I used a Dremel to cut out a slot to accommodate the sight. While the holster is not the highest quality to begin with, and Serpa-style paddle release holsters have their own issues, it's the only option I've found for a rigid holster that can be modified to accommodate an optic without compromising its retention. And without an optic, things get a lot easier. They're the usual cheap universal holsters that will fit it, but there are also Kydex holsters made for the real thing, and I can confirm that they will fit the WE as well. Moving away from the tactical shooting niche, there actually exist inside waistband concealed carry holsters, which aren't fooling anybody. Is that a Magnum in your pants, or are you just happy to see me? But anyways, if you're going to conceal a Desert Eagle, there's only one acceptable way to do it, and that's by channeling Miami Vice. This Masters leather shoulder holster accommodates both the pistol and a pair of magazines, so what more could you want? But personally, I keep going back to that Ammo Max holster, mediocre as it is. With a Molly adapter, it's easy to attach to my kit, and with an optic and heavy BBs, I'm able to engage beyond the effective range of many players. The WE Desert Eagle has, with a couple of choice upgrades, proven to be a surprisingly reliable and accurate sidearm for a relatively low price, and always attracts attention at the field. And that's all for today. Let us know in the comments what you think, or if you have any questions about these guns, and thanks for watching.